New Urbanism in Africa contextualizes future city designs within the regional context of sub-Saharan Africa's larger cities, or what Vanessa Watson refers to as the last frontier for international property development. This is based on her paper with the title African Urban Fantasies, Dreams or Nightmares, and as such it presents more of a critique of new urban visions of African cities than presents an urban design theory, though her philosophy of urban design for Africa does come through. Getting to know Vanessa Watson first. Vanessa Watson is a professor of city planning in the School of Architecture, Planning and Geomatics in the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. She holds degrees from the Universities of Natal, Cape Town, and the Architectural Association of London, and a PhD from the University of Witwatersrand. She's been working for over 30 years, focusing on urban planning in the Global South and the effects of inappropriate planning practices and theories, particularly in Africa. She's also the founder of the Association of African Planning Schools and the African Center for Cities at the University of Cape Town. African Urban Fantasies, Dreams or Nightmares, which was published in Environment and Urbanization in 2014, reviews new plans for African cities in light of buzzwords like new urbanism, smart cities, eco-cities, and evaluates the impacts of these new city visions on those currently living there and those on surrounding lands. The new city plans include complete makeovers, creation of satellite cities, and developing extensions to existing cities that are showcased in 7 such examples. Though there is little published research on these new plans, the future city plans she reviews in her paper are sourced from urbanafrica.net and from International Property Development Company websites and other internet sources. The 7 new future city plans in Africa are Kigali Conceptual Master Plan in Kigali, Tattoo City in Nairobi, Konza Techno City in Nairobi, Hope City in Accra, Kigamboni in Dar es Salaam, Cité Le Fleuve in Kinshasa, and Eco Atlantic in Lagos. There are a few commonalities among these future cities. They are all large-scale cities that involve rethinking the planning of all or large parts of an existing city, or more often than not, a restructuring of the city through the creation of satellite cities that are linked. They are mostly glamorous three-dimensional graphics, strikingly similar to iconic images in Dubai, Shanghai, or Singapore, rather than detailed land use plans. And there are clear attempts at creating linkages between these city visions and the buzzwords like urban sustainability, risk, new technologies, smart, etc., as though this is the pathway towards modernizing African cities to actually claim the slogan, Africa Rising. Most of these city visions that Vanessa Watson critiques are sourced either on the websites of international private development companies that have developed them, or are featured on the government websites that reference the sources of these visions. Many of them appear to override existing formal city plans, or at best run in parallel to what exists, but generally do not have a legal or governance structure. And lastly, a common observation is that there is no indication that any kind of community involvement or public participation or democratic debate took place in their making. Let's take a look at each of these new cities and contrast that against Vanessa Watson's critical analysis of them and what she calls fantasies. The Kigali Conceptual Master Plan for Kigali in Rwanda was developed by a company based in the United States, together with a company in Singapore, and was adopted by the Rwandan Parliament in 2008. In the 2 figures shown here as A and B, the master plan includes glassbox towers, landscape boulevards, and highways, all indicative of high modernism, yet they have framed it about sustainability. Inspiration for this master plan for Kigali comes from Dubai, Singapore, and even London, where a building similar to the Gherkin in London can be seen in the distance in Figure B. With a clear commitment to business-friendly development, Rwanda considers itself the Switzerland of Africa, and the plan is designed to reflect this vision of the government. Finance and construction of this plan is underway and links to companies in China and Hong Kong. Now, to contrast this fantasy with a 2010 UN Habitat report, which states that 90% of Kigali's population lives in informal housing or with unregulated or unrecognized tenure. Many evictions in Kigali have been reported prior to the adoption of this new plan to make room for new urban projects such as this one. Next is Tattoo City in Nairobi, Kenya, which is One of the cities proposed as part of the Nairobi 2030 Metro Strategy. The 2030 strategy was unveiled by the Kenyan government in 2008 and states that it aims to make Nairobi a world-class African metropolis, and after which an international competition was launched to design the physical space to accompany the plan, which proposes about 15 satellite cities, though none have come to fruition. The rationale for satellite cities is that these new cities will redirect future population growth away from the mother city, Nairobi, which is overcongested. The strategy documents highlight that these new centers will provide a wide range of lifestyle choices outside of work that will complement the envisaged business success of the region. Tattoo City is designed to be built on productive coffee land and is planned for 70,000 residents and 30,000 visitors by day. The developers claim that Tattoo City will attract discerning residents, companies, and retailers who wish to live, work, and play in the most modern, well-planned urban development in East Africa. Financing was supposed to be underwritten by a Russian-based company, claimed to be the world's leading emerging markets investment bank, but the project is now tied up in a court case over land acquisition. Also in Kenya is Konza Techno City in Nairobi, located 60 kilometers from Nairobi, is planned for 30,000 residents and is envisaged to be like a Kenyan Silicon Valley. The first phase is expected to cost $3 billion and will include a 5,000-acre technology park. Optimistically, the Kenyan government has been looking for a single developer to plan and fund this project, but a lack of funding commitment on the part of the government has been holding up the process, in addition to evident disputes with local landowners in the area. In Ghana, Hope City, just outside of Accra, is a new satellite technology city to be built. It was designed by an Italian architect and will be built by a Ghana-based IT company estimated to cost $10 billion, and Microsoft will be a partner in this development. The city will consist of 6 linked towers as shown in the image to house 25,000 residents and 50,000 workers. These towers, which are marketed as highly sustainable and promote green building technology, appear to emerge from the ground, have neither bearing nor relationship to their surrounding environment, though they were inspired by ancient mud and thatched huts arranged into a compound typical of African traditional society, according to the architect. The final location of the city shifted from one area to another because in the initial site selection, the residents claimed the project had incurred the displeasure of the gods when the developers refused to acknowledge the chiefs and elders of the area. Next is Kigamboni in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, which claims it will be an eco-city that will relieve Dar es Salaam of congestion and land shortages, and is planned by a state-owned Korean company that appears to initiate new cities in Africa and Asia. This project has been supported by the Tanzanian government and a ministry led by a previous head of UN Habitat and remembered for her promotion of inclusive cities. The first phase will be developed by companies from Dubai and the United Arab Emirates and China to house 82,000 households that are currently living on the site and have been promised compensation to cover part of the costs of accessing the new units that are to be built there. Sadly, this dream city, which boasts of an ultra-modern urban center with facilities competing with those in places like Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, is only affordable to very few of these existing residents. The area is divided into single-use land zones, business, industry, education, residential, and tourism, in addition to a road system that is certainly oriented towards a car-owning public. Together, these single-functional areas in an auto-centric city creates a divide within the city. And this one, Cité Le Fleuve in Kinshasa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is a new development that has been designed by a consortium of international design companies and will occupy 2 islands on reclaimed land in the Congo River, and is coordinated by an African-based fund management company that also serves European and US investors. The city will include mixed retail, office, and residential development, and one of the islands will be devoted to upmarket residential accommodation and promises for making it a model for the rest of Africa. Though the reality of Kinshasa shows that it is a war-ravaged city of 9 million people, the majority of whom live in deep poverty and barely make a living from small informal businesses. And finally, Eco Atlantic in Lagos, Nigeria, is located on an infill site on Victoria Island in Lagos, and the development is clearly visible on a satellite image. This project is close to central Lagos, and part of it is situated on newly created land that projects into the sea. The city claims to be the largest urban development project in Africa, to be built on 10 square kilometers of reclaimed land and will hold 250,000 people and will solve Lagos's problems of congestion and infrastructure decay. The developers are based in the Middle East and funders are local and international, and as shown in the figures, the city shows a strong influence of modern architecture and borrows visuals from iconic buildings in global cities. So were the African urban fantasies dreams or nightmares? In most of the cities we just covered here, governments find it easier to avoid the difficulties of removing a dense urban fabric and seek less fiercely contested land on the urban edge or in the rural areas beyond. Around African cities, these semi-urban areas have been growing very rapidly as poor urban dwellers look for a place in the cities and towns where land is more easily available, where they can escape the costs and threats of urban land regulations, and where there's a possibility of combining urban and rural livelihoods. And these are precisely the areas that are targeted for development by these new projects. These new cities and developments are designed to be self-contained, but often are designed to insulate themselves from the disorder and chaos of the existing cities. Satellite cities are not able to sustain all the job and service requirements of their residents and tend to generate large volumes of movement and traffic as they find themselves having to travel back to more established urban centers. Wealthy agglomerations are also usually unable to function without low-income service providers such as domestic workers, gardeners, construction workers, etc. And inevitably, an informal city grows around the edges of the formal city.